A psychologist asked a 7-year-old, "What do you wish you had from before?" The child stared, not thinking, not remembering, genuinely confused by the question. Before what? Before the collapse. Before everything changed. The child thought about this, then asked, "Why would I wish for something that doesn't exist?" This is the moment researchers realized something fundamental. Not because they're traumatized, not because they're in denial, but because you cannot miss what you never conceptualized as possible. To a child born in 2025, the idea of before is like asking them to miss being a dinosaur. It's not their history, it's mythology, and you don't mourn mythology. One settlement tried an experiment. They showed children photos from 2019, supermarkets, highways, crowds. The children studied them carefully. Then one asked, "Is this a movie?" The adults explained, "No, this was real. This is how people lived." The children looked at each other. One said, "That's a lot of people in one place." Another, "Where are they going?" A third, "Why aren't they working?" The adults said, "They're shopping. For fun." Long silence. One child finally asked, "What's fun?" The question wasn't sarcastic. It was literal. Because in their world, every action has purpose. Food, shelter, safety, survival. The concept of doing something for enjoyment alone doesn't translate. Child development experts documented this pattern across 200+ survivor settlements. Children under 12 cannot comprehend leisure, entertainment, hobbies, celebration, vacation. These aren't just missing experiences. They're missing concepts. One researcher described it this way: imagine explaining color to someone who's been blind since birth. That's what we're doing when we describe the old world. We're describing something they have no framework to process, and they're not interested in building that framework. Because why would they? In the old world, identity came from accumulation, where you're from, what you studied, what you like, what you've done. Post-apocalypse children have none of this, so they build identity from something else entirely. One settlement asked children to introduce themselves. Pre-collapse adult, "I'm Sarah. I'm from Boston. I was a teacher. I love reading." Post-collapse child, "I'm functional. I can hunt. I can fight. I contribute." The adults tried to explain. "But who are you?" The child didn't understand the question. "I just told you." No, who are you as a person? A person who hunts and fights and contributes. But what do you like? What makes you happy? Being useful. This is the identity shift researchers are documenting. Pre-collapse identity: internal, abstract, individualistic. Post-collapse identity: external, functional, collective. You're not defined by what you feel. You're defined by what you do. You're not defined by your past. You're defined by your present capability. You're not defined by preferences. You're defined by utility. One psychologist tested this with a simple exercise. Draw a picture of yourself. Pre-collapse children drew faces, smiles, clothing, favorite colors. Post-collapse children drew stick figures, holding weapons, or tools, or nothing. When asked, "Why no details?" one child said, "Details don't matter. Only function matters." "But don't you have a favorite color?" The child thought hard. "No." "Don't you like some things more than others?" "I like things that work." Another test. "If you could be anything, what would you be?" Pre-collapse children: astronaut, singer, athlete, artist. Post-collapse children: alive. Every single one. When pushed to elaborate, they added alive and not a burden. That's the full extent of aspiration. Because identity in survival mode isn't about becoming. It's about remaining, not who you'll be, who you won't stop being. One settlement leader described their daughter. "She's 9. I don't know her favorite food. She doesn't have one. I don't know what makes her laugh. She doesn't laugh. I don't know what she dreams about. She says dreams are sleep inefficiency, but I know she can set 12 different trap types." And that's her entire identity. A 10-year-old found an injured stranger outside the settlement, brought the adults. The adults rushed to help. The child watched them work, then asked, "Why are we helping him?" The adults explained, "Because he's hurt, because he needs help, because it's the right thing to do." The child said, "But we don't know if he's useful." The adults, "That doesn't matter." The child, "Why not?" The adults, "Because human life has value." The child, "What value?" The adults couldn't answer, not because there's no answer, but because the answer requires accepting premises the child doesn't have. Pre-collapse morality is built on axioms. Human dignity is inherent. Rights exist independent of utility. Compassion is self-justifying. These are foundational, unquestionable. Post-collapse children have different axioms. Resources are finite. Survival is the only imperative. Cost-benefit is objective truth. Both systems are logically consistent, but they're incompatible. One settlement tried to teach the golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. A 12-year-old asked, "What if they're weak?" "You still treat them well, even if it costs resources?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it's right." "But who decides right?" The teacher said, "Society. Humans. We all agree on basic rights." The child said, "Your society died. That means your rights were wrong." The teacher, "That's not, it's more complex." The child, "Things that work survive. Things that don't die. Your way died." This is the core of their moral system. Evolutionary ethics. If it survives, it's correct. If it dies, it's incorrect. Morality isn't philosophy. It's natural selection. Another settlement asked children, "Is it wrong to steal?" 100% said, "Wrong to get caught." The adults clarified, "No. Is the act of stealing morally wrong?" The children didn't understand. One finally said, "If you need it and can take it, take it. If you get caught, you weren't good enough." The adults explained, "But that creates a society where no one trusts anyone." The child said, "No. It creates a society where everyone gets better at not getting caught, or better at guarding. Either way, everyone improves." From their perspective, it's perfect logic. Theft creates evolutionary pressure. Pressure creates adaptation. Adaptation creates strength. Strength creates survival. Therefore, theft is pro-social. One psychologist noted, "We keep trying to teach them our ethics, but our ethics got us killed. Their ethics are keeping them alive." How do we argue against that? One settlement found a breakthrough. A group of children, ages 8 to 13, started asking about music, not to trade for rations, just asking. The adults brought out instruments, taught them songs. For 3 weeks, the children played every evening. No prompting, no rewards, just playing. One adult wrote in their journal, "They're smiling, actually smiling. Maybe they're not so different. Maybe there's still connection. Maybe we haven't lost them." Then, one child asked, "Why do the songs sound sad?" The adult said, "Because they're about loss, missing people, missing places." The child thought about this, then said, "That's wasteful. Why memorialize what's gone?" They stopped playing the next day. There's a list of words disappearing from post-apocalypse children's vocabulary, not because they're forbidden, because they have no use. Hope. When asked to define it, one child said, "Waiting for things to improve without action." That's not hope, but they have no other framework for it. Beauty. Things that don't help survival. Again, not quite right, but close enough that they stopped asking. Love. This one's harder. They understand attachment, protection, pair bonding, but love as something beyond utility. One child said, "You mean like caring about someone even if they're not useful?" Yes. That sounds dangerous. Researchers call this conceptual extinction, ideas dying, because there's no environment for them to survive in. But here's what's disturbing. The children don't feel the loss. You can't mourn a color you've never seen. One settlement tried to explain art, showed them paintings, sculptures, photographs. The children studied them carefully. One asked, "What do they do?" "Nothing. They're just beautiful." "So they're broken tools?" "No, they're not tools. They're art." "What's the difference?" The adults tried to explain. Art expresses emotion, captures meaning, reflects humanity. The children nodded politely, then never looked at the art again. Because here's the thing about abstract concepts. They require mental space, and mental space requires safety, and safety requires excess resources. And these children never had excess resources. One psychologist described it. Maslow's hierarchy is real. You can't think about self-actualization when you're worried about food. You can't contemplate beauty when you're scanning for threats. These children live in permanent survival mode. The higher concepts just never develop. But they're not intellectually limited. They're incredibly smart. They can calculate ration distribution in their heads. They can memorize terrain after one viewing. They can predict weather patterns from minimal data. Their intelligence is optimized, just not for what we recognize as human. One adult asked their child, "Don't you ever wonder about the stars?" The child said, "I know their fusion reactions." "Is there more?" "Don't you think they're beautiful?" "I think they're distant and irrelevant." "Doesn't that make you sad?" "Why would irrelevant things make me sad?" The adult realized their child wasn't being dismissive. Their child genuinely could not access whatever part of consciousness makes people stare at stars. It's not gone. It never formed. By 2045, linguists noticed something alarming. The vocabulary of post-apocalypse children was shrinking, not because they're less educated, because they're more efficient. Words require justification. If a word doesn't serve a function, it disappears. And in survival mode, most words don't serve a function. Here are words documented as functionally extinct in children under 15. Whimsy, nostalgia, ambition, privacy, dignity, leisure, wonder, delight. New words are emerging. Drag, a person who slows the group. Null, a person with no skills. Viable, a person worth resources. Fade, to be removed from the group. One settlement tried to ban these words, called them dehumanizing. The children stopped using them around adults, but kept using them with each other, because the words were accurate. One psychologist recorded children talking. Child 1, new person is a null. Child 2, confirm, no skills observed. Child 1, recommend fade before winter. Child 2, agreed, resources insufficient for nulls. The psychologist intervened. That's a human being you're talking about. The children looked at her. Child 1, we know. So why talk about him like that? Child 2, because accurate assessment prevents group death. This is the efficiency of their language. No euphemism, no softening, no emotional buffer, just data. But the loss goes deeper than vocabulary. Grammar itself is changing. Researchers found post-apocalypse children rarely use past tense beyond 24 hours, future tense beyond 1 week, hypotheticals, subjunctives, because the past is irrelevant. The distant future is unknowable. Hypotheticals are mental waste, and subjunctives require imagining alternate realities. One test asked, what would you do if you found $1 million? Pre-collapse child, I'd buy a house and a car and go to Disneyland. Post-collapse child, currency has no value. I'd burn it for heat. The researcher clarified, no, imagine money still worked. The child, but it doesn't. Yes, but pretend it does. The child looked uncomfortable. Why would I pretend something false? This is the loss of imaginative play. These children don't pretend. Pretending is lying, and lying is maladaptive. One parent tried to play make-believe with their 6-year-old. The parent tried different approaches, tried toys, tried stories, tried games. The child engaged with puzzles, problem solving. The child engaged with building, resource creation. But fantasy, fiction, make-believe, complete incomprehension. One researcher concluded, imagination requires the belief that things could be different. These children have never seen things be different. Their world has always been this, so the cognitive framework for different doesn't exist. In 2046, a philosopher visited a survivor settlement, asked the children, what makes someone human? The answers, 2 arms, 2 legs, human, DNA, ability to communicate, bipedal locomotion, all biological, all technical. The philosopher pushed, but what makes humanity special? One child asked, special compared to what? Compared to animals. We're smarter. Is that all? What else is there? The philosopher tried compassion, art, love, the ability to imagine, to dream, to wonder. The children listened. One finally said, those are luxuries, not requirements. And that's the divide. Adults think humanity is defined by its highest expressions. Children think humanity is defined by its baseline survival traits. One settlement held a debate. Adults argued, humanity is what we create, our culture, our values, our legacy. Children argued, humanity is what we are, biological, functional, adaptive. Neither side could convince the other, because they were arguing from different definitions of existence itself. One adult said, without art and love and meaning, we're just animals. A child responded, you say that like it's bad. Animals survive. Your culture didn't. The adults, but survival isn't enough. There has to be purpose. The children, survival is the purpose. What else would it be? This is the question that haunts every researcher. Are these children the future of humanity or the end of it? They're alive, healthy, adapted. They're thriving in ways the old world couldn't. Their settlements have lower mortality, higher efficiency, better resource management. By every survival metric, they're succeeding, but they've lost. Music for its own sake, stories without purpose, laughter without cause, curiosity without application, love without utility. One 17-year-old interviewed extensively. Your generation keeps asking what we've lost. We don't see loss. We see optimization. You carried weight. We dropped it. You preserved excess. We eliminated waste. You mourned the dead with monuments. We learn from the dead and move forward. But doesn't anything scare you about that? Why would efficiency scare me? Because maybe there's something you can't measure, something important that you're missing. The teenager thought about this. If we can't measure it and we survive without it, was it ever important? That's the question researchers can't answer. Maybe they're right. Maybe humanity is just survival. Maybe everything else was decoration we couldn't afford. Maybe the old world's values were beautiful but fatal. Maybe caring about things beyond survival is what killed us. Or maybe they're losing something that can't be quantified but was worth everything. Maybe humanity without wonder isn't humanity. Maybe survival without meaning is just slow extinction. The 17-year-old's final statement: in 50 years, people like you will be gone. Only people like me will remain, and we'll build something that works. Whether it's human by your definition doesn't matter, because you won't be here to judge. And that might be the most honest answer we'll get. These children don't miss the old world. Not because they're damaged, not because they're wrong, but because they've genuinely moved beyond it. Whether that's evolution or extinction, progress or tragedy, the future or the end, we won't live long enough to know. People disagree violently about this. I want to know what you think. Hit the like button. Subscribe for more psychological breakdowns of what happens when civilization ends. And comment, are these children more evolved, or have they lost what makes us human?